there are one or two players that haven't been capped yet that could still make the summer. I'd be certain about that.
Do you fear like a David Beckham or a Wayne Rooney moment?
There isn't a job in world football that would intimidate or daunt you having lived this one.
Do you think you still enjoy the role as much as you did?
Good question.
We've come to St George's Park, the National Football Centre, just a few days before Christmas to catch up with the England manager as he begins to plot a plan to win Euro 2024. If the men's senior team manage it, of course, they'll match what the under-21s achieved in the summer and, even more so, match what the women achieved the summer before. In qualifying, England's men were almost perfect. Unbeaten throughout the whole group, they finished top, and they were among the top seeds for the draw in Hamburg a couple of weeks ago. Gareth Southgate was pretty pleased as he reflected on 2023. Gareth, thanks for talking to us. And we catch you at the end of a pretty eventful year. But how do you look back at 2023?
We had definitely the toughest qualifying group in terms of rankings. So Ukraine, Italy were the two big concerns, but we knew North Macedonia had big results in the past as well. So to go to Italy and win and then back that up with beating them at home, and we hadn't won away for 50 odd years and we hadn't won at home for 50 years. So they were important results, but also good performances. I enjoyed the game in Scotland. I thought not a qualifier, but Scotland were really going well and the atmosphere on the night was brilliant.
Extra to it for a challenge for the players, didn't
No, it did. I mean, we knew what it would be, and I think those nights are a great experience for our players to go through.
I mean, you've been in post for a good while now. What do you think you've learned in the last 12 months? Anything new? Or is it just more of a progression of learning about the squad and individual players?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you learn all the time when you're in football. There's new developments within the game. Definitely the new caps going in, that's always nice to see. So we've found a balance of winning the games we needed to. Probably more experimentation towards the end of the year. And two wins against a big nation, which we said after the World Cup was one of the areas we wanted to get more consistent at. I think if you look across the top 8 teams in the world, the head-to-head games are often draws. France have been the country that have really nailed those games. 5-6 years ago, they were the games that we weren't getting over the line in. Then we started to win a few. We beat Belgium at Wembley. We had a couple of wins against Germany, obviously Croatia we beat a couple of times, and now Italy twice. So, I haven't seen the form table of those head-to-heads, but in the last few years we would have definitely be higher up that list, and that's important because in the end, in a tournament, they're the games that make the difference.
I want to ask you specifically about Harry Maguire, because in all my career, I'm not sure I've seen a player have to deal with some of the stuff that he's had to deal with in the last couple of seasons.
Gareth Southgate launches a passionate defence of Harry Maguire.
It makes me livid because thankfully he's got the support of the dressing room and people behind him.
I'm an experienced player now, and I know how to block it out, and I know how to focus and concentrate and get through the games. But obviously, it probably affects my family and my friends more than it actually affects myself.
To come through that with the sort of honour that he has, what does that say about him as a man as much as a footballer from your perspective? And you know him as well as anybody.
Yeah, look, he's a resilient character, and you've got to have that resilience if you're playing at a club like Manchester United. Again, you're talking one of the biggest clubs in the world. There is always going to be any number of stories in the news every day about a club like that. He's been captain there in the recent past, so that brings another level of intensity to any speculation or stories. People say, you have your favourites, but it's not a case of they're the people I like the most. They're the people that have played well for us. They're the ones that we think are still our best players. So, there might be a moment in the future where it's not Harry and John, it's the next two, and that's football. But when players have performed as they have, and as Harry has for us, and we know that he can play in the biggest games, we've seen him in the tournaments, we know what he brings to the group. In my view, you back your players, and I've felt at the times we've felt the need to do that. It's been the right thing to do.
You've done this role for a long time now, and I've seen you change and adapt over the years in lots of different ways. Do you think you still enjoy the role as much as you did?
No, good question. What does enjoyment mean? You know, in the end, my day-to-day work I love because I work alongside good people, and working with the team, we have players that we like a lot. They're responsive to everything that you do. They want to get better. We work with top players, so that's a privilege. Where does enjoyment come from? I mean, the big games that you win, of course, are enjoyable after for a few minutes. So that is a very small hit of enjoyment. But you're working, so I love the responsibility. Look, I played for Terry Venables, who sadly we lost recently, and I saw some interviews with him saying, you know, how did he look back on it? And he said, "Oh, what a privilege! You know, big matches, big players." And he's right. You know, that is what you're dealing with. A night like Hampden, where you're representing England, you're going into the cauldron. The team play well, we win. You know, those are great nights. You do enjoy that as you sit back on the bus, but it's brief. You know, I can't deny that the victories as you're in the game longer, they last for less and less time, because there's always the next challenge.
Part of the reason I ask is that I think your role is unique, and I think actually the way you've approached it is unique, because you've tried to answer every question. World politics, you know, prejudice and racism that I've spoken to you no end of times where we've seen that in places at home and around the world that you've had to deal with and the players have had to deal with. You know, some of the alleged misdemeanours and potential criminality of England players. This is difficult stuff. You probably saw what everybody else saw. What did you make of it? And does it show that misogyny in football, if you like, is there for everybody to see, and it's not just a Spanish problem as well?
You got any concerns about the potential fan reaction towards Jordan if he does play in these two games?
Because of what?
Well, because of the controversy around his move to Saudi Arabia.
Do you get sick of that? The fact that you've got to be a politician as much as you have a football manager?
I think it's the responsibility that comes with the job. So I always have to be mindful that every time I speak, yes, I speak on behalf of the team, I speak on behalf of England football, I speak on behalf of the FA, but I'm representing our country. So when I'm asked to be, I don't know, critical of another country, I've also got to bear in mind that I'm an ambassador for our country travelling. We might have political relations, we might have trade with those countries. You can undo a lot of good work that goes on behalf of our country by government or civil servants or whatever else. So there is this real layer that comes with the responsibility of being a national manager. You also have the chance to affect important areas of society. So inclusion, for example, over the last few years would have been a big one. Now that's also going to alienate people that don't agree with your thoughts, and I have to accept that, and there's some kickback on that as well. But I feel that's the right thing. It's definitely representing my team and our players and their families and what they've lived through. So what we would really love is that I think what England provides is bringing everybody together in support of a national team. And you know, England is a diverse country, and to be able to bring everybody together with that enjoyment that football brings that is just different to club, that it will always be a privilege. So you know, my start point was always, can we give the nation nights like the ones I remember when I was a kid? And we've had a lot of those, and we want to bring more.
Longer term, you've had so much success in this role. You've created such an environment where the players love being here. even as much, if not more, than they do at their clubs, which I've never seen before in an England camp. Is there part of you that thinks, I want to bring that to a Premier League club at some point in the future? I've done it with England. I wonder if I can do it at a big Premier League club and have the same environment and create what replicate what I've done here. Is that something that is on the Gareth Southgate plan and the CV, if you like, going forward?
I know that I could do that, so there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I was 35 years old when I managed in the Premier League, and we finished 12th and 13th, and I knew nothing like what I know now. And there isn't a job in world football that would intimidate or daunt you, having lived this one. Everybody would talk about Middlesbrough. Oh, he got Middlesbrough relegated. Well, yeah, in the third year we got relegated, but I had 3 years of Premier League management. Without doubt, in my mind, the first season there was the biggest achievement I've had, because to go from captain, player to managing multi-million-pound business in the toughest league in the world at 35, and finish, pretty much a par finish for where we were budget-wise. Who's in that sort of echelon in the table now? That's difficult. So I'm confident in this role. I'm confident in whatever might be in the future. Of course, I'm not going to be here for 20, 30 years. I don't know what the future will be. I'm very calm about that. But I'm not worried about what that might be. I remember talking to Jose when he was at Man United, and he said to me, when you've done the role you're in now, you'll be able to do anything, really. And I thought that was probably right, but 7 years into it, it's definitely right.
Welcome back to St George's Park, where we're continuing our festive special with the England manager Gareth Southgate. Now we're turning our attentions to the upcoming Euros in the summer. Of course, England will be among the favourites to lift the trophy. Two really big reasons for that: the sensational form of two of their star players, Jude Bellingham and the captain, Harry Kane. I want to ask you specifically about Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham, who are playing abroad, because they both get winter breaks, which is something you've been arguing about for a long time. In Harry Kane's case, he gets just over 3 weeks. He's never had that in his career. And when you look at how well he's playing this season for Bayern and for England, is that exactly what you... I mean, is the part of you that's licking your lips and thinking, wow, Harry Kane, having had 3 weeks break at Christmas, what's he going to be like in the second half of the season and for the Euros?
Well, I know why they have it, having been in Germany, because we're 6 feet of snow. So, no, look, I think if you're looking at what's the right model for football generally, the players need recovery. So how you go about that, you can have a winter break or you can have a longer summer break, and you could argue for either. I think if you look statistically at the leagues that have the winter breaks, they have fewer injuries in the second half of the season. Now that doesn't guarantee anything, because there would be a lot of players who didn't go to the World Cup last year, who had a great break in the middle of the season, but have still picked up injuries this year. So it's a bit of a case-by-case basis. But I don't think it does the players any harm to have that break psychologically as well as physically. And yeah, to your earlier point, Harry and Jude are both playing exceptionally well at their clubs. They're obviously both at huge football clubs that perhaps when we're more focused on the Premier League, we can underestimate the size of a Bayern Munich and the size of a Real Madrid. These are two of the biggest clubs in the world.
Jude Bellingham in this England side makes England real Euros contenders. Personal opinion, I think he's kind of what you've been searching for some time, and that's no disrespect to the rest of England's midfielders. You've got absolute quality there, but he's got that something extra. He's a special talent, isn't he? And I wonder what your perspective is on just how special he is.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is playing at one of the biggest clubs in the world, arguably the biggest if you look at their history, and he's been their most important player in this opening phase of the season. So the maturity to adapt to that the way he has says everything really about how he is as a player and as a character, really. What's emerged in the last few months, they didn't have Benzema so they've adjusted their way of playing. He's in a much more advanced area, so he's not playing as a midfield player actually, which is interesting because it's given him the freedom to run forward more, a little less defensive responsibility.
You've played him in a more advanced role in recent matches as well. Played him as a number 10. I know you don't play with a number 10, but certainly without that necessary, the quite so much responsibility to get back.
Yeah. No.
And he can play all three of those.
Well, he has got some responsibility. He might not always do that, but he has got some responsibility to get back. So if he's watching, let's get that right. But no, I mean, look, we have played him higher because Jude off of Harry in some of the matches that has allowed us to attack and defend in a slightly different way. We'd be mad not to try and get that partnership working together. But I think, to them, if we're thinking of him to play a deeper midfield role now, well, that's not what he's doing at Madrid. So that in terms of balance of how you might pick the team, is something that we've got to bear in mind at this moment in time. But they're great problems to have, when you've got two players that are up in the leading goal scorers in La Liga and in the Bundesliga. That's a great asset for us to have.
So is that the biggest Christmas wish, that you have all of the key players fit over Christmas in this particularly concentrated period, but going forward as well? Because I get the impression that this England team, when it's at full strength, is a match for anybody in Europe and possibly the world as well. Without some of your key players, that's probably not the case. Is that the reality?
I think that's the case for every nation, really. Yeah. If you look at every football club, you need your best players for the biggest games. I think any football club in the world, even Manchester City, even a Real Madrid, when they don't have certain players, it takes something out of the team. So inevitably you don't look quite the same without your very best players. We're fortunate that in a lot of positions we've got really good competition and the drop-off isn't too bad, and the key of course is to find a way to win whoever you have available. So I think Jude only played 5 of our 10 games last year, for example. So we try to make sure that we're developing others for those eventualities, but you're 100% right. Your best chance of winning is to have your best players available.
Last couple of camps you gave debuts to Rico Lewis, to Cole Palmer, to Levi Colwell as well. From here on in, because you've got a squad of 23, you've got a name for the Euros, it's not that big a squad that we've had in the past. Can we expect there'll be fewer first-time call-ups for you now as you try and refine the squad that you want and the way you want them to play?
I think our responsibility has always been, you've got to win the game that's in front of you, but also develop players and progress players, and so we will always continue to do that. I think there are 1 or 2 players that haven't been capped yet that could still make the summer. I'd be certain about that. So, I mean, it should be harder to get in the team now. We're established. We're 23, not 26. We're not an ageing squad, so this team isn't going to suddenly drop after this next tournament. Our young players, if you're talking 23, some of them have got 20, 30 caps already. So actually we're where we've wanted to be for 10 years, really. You want a lot of players with a lot of caps, and then that means that the younger ones have got to be at a really good level to get in. That's the competition you want if you're going to be a successful country.
It's very notable, the opposition you picked for March. I mean, two in the world's top 4 in Belgium and Brazil. It doesn't get any tougher than that. So it's pretty clear what you're thinking there. You want to challenge yourself and see how the team performs against the very, very best. What are you thinking for June for those 2 friendlies, now that you know the draw?
March, definitely an opportunity to test ourselves against some of the very best, which we've always done. The first friendlies we ever took were Germany away, France away. In June, we don't know whether we'll have all the players. Might not be able to work on the tactical side of things because we might not have all the team together. So it's not as essential to get a team ranked in the top 10. So it's a little bit more fluid, and also the availability of teams and what they all want to do is different.
The pride that you showed in representing your country as a player, the pride that you've instilled in this group as well, not just the players, But I see the physios and the sports scientists and the kit man all belting out the national anthem alongside you. That pride that you've brought and you inherently feel, can you dare to think about 2024 and the Summer Euros and actually lifting that trophy? That's what this has all been about for your entire journey, and you've achieved so much, but you haven't won that trophy, and I know that will rankle with you if it doesn't happen. If you dare to think that 2024 is the year when all of that pride comes to a culmination.
Yeah, well look, I think there's two separate parts there, because pride we all have. That's the honour of representing England. That's why I wanted to make English football better when I came here to work on youth development, when I came here to work with the under-21s. The dream is always to be winning the trophy that we haven't had for an increasing number of years now. So yes, we've had the first semi-final for however long, we had the first final for however long. We're still trying to break history here, because we've never been to a final away from England. We've never won a European Championship. So we are trying to break barriers down all the time. But pride alone won't be enough to do that. We have to play well, we have to manage well, we have to, as a group of staff, work well together. So I think the pride is inherent with wearing the badge. We definitely make sure that we remember that, because we lost to Bobby Charlton, for example. What's gone before, we've always got to remember and recognise we're part of this timeline of England football. So we should appreciate that and cherish it. But good decisions are what's required. Players playing well, everybody committed for the cause, everybody sacrificing themselves for the group. That's how we'll win. And we know we're capable because we've been so close. It's eminently possible.
Eminently possible is a really good way to finish it.